Very good. Today we're talking with Dr. Charles Shidlofsky. I had to slow down to make sure I get that right, like people do with my name. But Dr. Charles, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to speak with us. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So when I was we're new connection. We don't know each other before now, and I was just taking a look and into your practice and kind of what you have out there on your website and things. And the thing that came up for me is that you've built a very comprehensive style practice, meaning you have a large suite of traditional plus advanced services on your site that you and your team up there in Plano, take care of. And I know we've got a lot of folks who listen to this and who I interact with a lot who would like to add more, either some start that journey or add more advanced services to their practice. So I'm really interested just to dig into that a bit. I mean, you were mentioning before that today a very small percentage of your practice is comprehensive eye exams. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. We're about down to about 10% comprehensive eye exams at this point in time.
Okay. And when you first started out, did you start just doing comprehensive eye exams, or did you have a specialty to start out?
I mean, I started out in general practice, doing what most optometrists do. But I did have an interest in sports vision coming out of school. Actually, my fourth year project in optometry school was working with a college baseball team. And I really had an interest in that. So what ended up happening was got started in practice, was doing comprehensive exams, came across a gentleman who was working with he was a coach for a little league baseball team. And I did a screening for his baseball team, and we worked with a couple of the players during the year. And it was funny. I was talking to a couple of the parents of the players, and they said to me, Johnny's baseball is getting a little bit better, but his schoolwork certainly is getting a lot better. And I was realizing I was having a big impact to more than just their sport. And so I said, okay, well, this is interesting. And I started doing some vision therapy, really a very, very cursory, basic form of vision therapy, with a lot of my younger patients as they were coming in. And I had a lot of visual processing problems as a child. Actually, most of it was discovered when I was in optometry school, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
And so I did vision therapy in optometry school for myself. But I didn't have the full buy-in on it, But until when I started doing it myself and started figuring things out and finding my own ways of doing things, I found out I can really make a big impact on people's lives, not just for their sports, but for their schoolwork and things like that. So my first, good portion of my time I spent working with children, and I developed actually treatments using Yoga Prism lenses for patients with autism. So I was seeing a lot of autistic patients, getting a lot of referrals for that. And I was seeing a lot of people with learning related vision problems and things of that nature. And it just kept growing and growing. And so after working in my little, I was basically in a chain practice for about 3 years. I opened up a practice with a couple of my classmates from optometry school, and we started, and we actually opened our first vision therapy room in that clinic. And I started doing more of it and more of it. And then about the mid 90s, I got contacted by someone when they were getting ready to open their very first laser center here in Dallas. And I became center director for that very first laser center. I started teaching PRK, pre and post op management, and I ended up getting hired away by an ophthalmologist to do that for him. But I had to tell him that I do some vision therapy, which was, a very interesting conversation, as you can imagine. And he says, well, I really want you to come into my practice. I said, only if you let me continue doing what I'm doing. So I probably had the only vision therapy practice in an ophthalmology practice for about 8 years.
Oh.
And while I was doing a lot of PRK and ultimately LASIK pre and post op management for him, and seeing a lot of his routine care fitting virtually all his contact lens, I was still doing some vision therapy. And what he saw in my patients and he was originally a strabismus surgeon, is that I was actually helping a lot of his patients and they were avoiding surgery. And that was the interesting thing. And then ultimately, what happens is I got to a point where he said to me, you need to cut back on that because you're so busy doing that now. And I had to sit down and really just have a conversation with myself and say, okay, what do I really want to do? And 20 years ago, I went out and decided to do this on my own and just focus on neurovision and things of that nature and doing vision therapy. So I opened my first office in 2003. And basically, about 6 months into that time there, I got a call from a neuro rehab center saying, "Hey, could you see some of our patients too? They probably need some of these services." I really had no idea what I was doing, but I said, "Okay, I just moved my own office. I have rent to pay, so I'll figure out what I need to do." And I started seeing neurovision rehab patients at that point. Shortly after that, I joined the Neuro-Optometric Rehabilitation Association and started going to conferences year to year, and I started getting understanding more and more. And ultimately, it kind of slowly transitioned my practice from a primary care practice. More and more vision rehab was being done. So when I went into that office, it was almost 50% of my practice. To now it's 90% of my practice doing that. And certainly along the path, I discovered other things. Like, for instance, when I was seeing a lot of kids, when they were done with therapy for me, later on, starting to develop myopia, I started getting into myopia management and myopia control. So we started doing ortho-K. We started doing different types of myopia management therapies, acupuncture, things of that nature. And also, when I started seeing more and more brain injury patients, that led me into dry eye, because almost all of them have dry eye. So it's been a transition. And then as recently about 8 or 9 years ago, we started going inpatient in hospitals and seeing patients in the rehab hospitals. So we're on staff at 3 inpatient rehab hospitals. So we'll go into the hospital, see the patient, and ultimately, hopefully, they'll come back to our office to see us for further treatment. So everything has kind of been an evolutionary process along the way to get us to where we are now. So it's been an exciting, I call myself the accidental tourist. I kind of got here by accident, but it's been a happy accident along the way.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I find it fascinating. I think if I understand this correctly, because a lot of times, especially when we're talking with other ODs who have, that traditional practice and are looking to add on any of these specialty or advanced services, that typically, the initial demand for that we would love to see come from their existing patient base, right? Because it's like built-in relationships, built-in wins that if they can be treated and you've got the tools to do it, it makes sense. And this is that natural built-in demand that you're talking about too. Although if I understand correctly, it's sounding like most of your initial built up demand was coming by way of working with the ophthalmologist. Is that right?
Well, yeah, I think what happened, when I was working with the ophthalmologist, and he was seeing a lot of strabismus patients and things like that, and then we would see these other patients come in the door, and I was already doing therapy before that, but it just allowed. I had a big growth while I was there, and I started working with other professionals. It opened the door to other professionals for me, going outside of optometry. So I started working with occupational therapy and physical therapy and physical medicine and all these other different fields that were starting to refer patients to me. And of course, what happens if you're treating like a disorder like autism and treating patients with that type of disorder, and they're getting better and they're seeing progress and they're making progress, the parents talk like crazy. They have all sorts of networking groups and things like that, and they talk amongst themselves, and it just grows your practice. I've really never advertised anything I've ever done. It's all been word of mouth. And just by being successful at doing what you're doing, it's just naturally propagated on its own. And then, of course, when occupational therapists, for instance, I was working with one and they were seeing all this progress, and they tell their friends, and then they start referring over. And it really was a natural propagation, just because of 1 or 2 simple facts. Number one, you have to be successful at what you're doing, right?
Sure.
The other thing is you have to be passionate about what you're doing. Okay, that really drives the whole thing. And it's like when I talk to optometrists about going into a specialty type practice, the thing I always tell them the most is choose what you love to do. Because I've been in practice 35 years now, and I love to come to work every day still. I'm not looking to leave anytime. Okay, so choose to do what you love to do and make your career into that. It's just so much more fulfilling.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, that echoes a lot of when people come up to me and are asking me about purchasing that IPL or that, whatever it is, right? That new piece of equipment and getting into this. And, we have quite a list of things we go through, but uh that's that's the main one. That should be at the top of the list, right? Like, are you passionate about providing that service and the benefits you're going to provide to those patients? Because if you're not, then it really doesn't matter, right?
Exactly,
It's like in
exactly.
any other industry. Like, who wants to go see? I mean, an eye doctor, an accountant, pick pick your pick your points, right? Any other industry, like who wants to go see a licensed professional who's supposed to be helping me either understand things better or get better, mentally or physically or even emotionally? There's those professionals too. Who wants to go see any of them? And they're just like, oh yeah, I really didn't want to come into work today, but here I am, and
Well,
you're in my chair. Um, and obviously people don't say that, but it can come across, right? When people just aren't passionate about their work. So I think
it's
it's
so
very
true. So very true. I mean, as I said, and for some, it's going to be different for everybody. You have that one person who's passionate about dry eyes and aesthetics. Go do dry eyes and aesthetics. You have the person passionate about low vision. Go do low vision. If you have a
Mhm.
passion about fitting specialty contact lenses, fit specialty contact lenses. Become the best at doing it. And it's easy to become the best. It just takes a lot. It takes work. You have to go to continuing education. You have to go to different conferences and courses to kind of further your skill, and then continue to do it. You don't get there by dabbling.
Yeah,
Dabblers, they might say, "Oh, I'm going to dabble in myopia management." Well, and they do one myopia management patient, but that's not really their love. Then it's really hard to continue doing it,
right,
because you're only doing it for the patient because they want to do it, but you got to do it for yourself ultimately.
right. Very good. So because how have you guys split that out in your practice? Because is there two or three doctors you have on staff there,
We
including
have three
yourself?
doctors on staff, and we usually have a resident also, although we don't have one this year. But we
Oh,
have,
okay.
but residencies start again July 1st, so we have a resident coming in for
Oh,
next
okay.
year.
All
But
right.
basically, yeah, we have the two of us and the resident coming in.
Mhm.
So basically, I try to oversee almost all patients that walk in the door here myself.
Okay.
Whether the other doctors are seeing them and I'm coordinating with them, or I'm seeing the patient myself. That's kind of how we do it. And the same thing, collaboration goes with my vision therapists in my I have three vision therapists in my practice. So I collaborate with them all day long on how to handle the patients, how to treat the patients, things of that nature. So we were, and then once a week we get all our doctors together and do a doctor's meeting and review cases or review other things related to the office operations of the office that need to be dealt with. So I think obviously, I think and communication with your staff becomes important too. You want
Mhm.
them to be as passionate as you are about doing it. You don't want people just coming here to work, having a job. You want them to have a career, and so we involve our whole staff in the whole process.
Okay. Yeah. Well put. Where you don't want them to have a job, but you want them to have a career. So it's a good point. It speaks volumes. Um, we were also talking before. You had mentioned that you're the president of the Neuro-Optometric Rehabilitation Association, and also a founding member and past president of the International Sports Vision Association. So two of the big specialty areas that you've uh, been practicing in for a long time, and you got up to the top of those each of those associations. Help found one, being a founding member. Talk a little bit about your work and experience there in those associations, and how's that impacted things both for your practice and for the industry. Um, Anything to mention there?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start out with Nora because I mentioned it already in my when I started seeing brain injury patients. A couple of months in, I went to my first Nora meeting, and I think I've missed three since.
Mm,
The meetings typically are in like September, October, early in the fall. This year, it's going to be in Orlando in mid-September. Um, it. When I first went to the first meeting, there were like 60 doctors there. That was about it. And
oh
now it's
wow.
about 200, 250 doctors there. And you got to realize the growth in the neuro-optometric world has really been staggering over the last few years. We're getting on hospital staffs now. every school, virtually every school has a residency in neurooptometry now. So it's really been a big growth area in optometry, but it's been kind of quiet, sitting by the wayside. But it does require specific training, and it really also requires that you have to be interdisciplinary. And I remember going to SCO and doing a lecture there about 15 years ago. And I said, what is more medical in optometry than treating a patient with a brain injury? Because we have to know everything about, we have to know all about pharmacology. We have to know about systemic disease. We have to know about ocular disease, because they all frequently they have diabetes, and or they may have glaucoma or hypertension. And they've obviously had maybe a stroke or a traumatic brain injury also. And don't forget, 80% of our input from the visual system affects the brain, right? So I mean, actually, I should probably rephrase that. 80% of the brain is devoted to vision in one way, shape, or form. That's probably a better way to describe it. So if they have a neurologic injury, it's probably going to affect their eyes to some degree. Sure. I see a lot of concussion patients, same thing. So that diffuse injury, but it affects a lot of visual function. It doesn't affect central vision per se, but it affects spatial vision, it affects convergence, it affects oculomotor skills. So it's affecting so many other parts of the visual system. Mm-hmm. So I kept going to NORA meetings and learning more and more and more different techniques. We evolved, because I got in so early in it. We've evolved a lot of our own techniques, and we've shared them with others. So I've taught lectures on neurovision rehabilitation all over the world at this point. And so it's really a wonderful thing to be able to do. So we kind of call the meeting the family reunion. It's like every year, all your buddies get together, and we sit down and talk, neurovision from sun up to sundown, and then into the night. And that's a lot. We almost call ourselves neuro nerds. We kind of really get into it. Now, I was at one of those meetings one day, maybe about 10 years ago. And I was sitting down with a couple of colleagues of mine. One was named Alex Andrich from Ohio, and Benoit Lambert, who's actually from Belgium. And we're sitting down having a conversation. And it was a time where the AOA was getting away from having sections. So they were getting rid of the AOA Sports Vision section. And early on, I belonged to an organization called International Academy of Sports Vision. And it had gone away back around 2000. And I said, there's a big hole in that area, because we never could get all the vendors and all the people doing sports vision in one room. Mm-hmm. And so basically we drew it out on a napkin, like every great invention, and we decided we're going to start an organization for sports vision. And now we've had, I think, 8 annual meetings. The annual meeting, I think, is going to be in January of 2025 again. We just did one in where did we do it? San Diego. And the next one, I think, it hasn't been announced yet where the next one will be. But we just get together and we do sporting events and we do activities, but we also teach sports vision techniques. And we share. And it's a nice small meeting of 150. And but we get all, we may have 18, 20 vendors that are just sports vision specific largely. So it's really a cool event. It's a lot of fun. And obviously, if you want to get involved with sports teams, and here in the Dallas area, I work with the Ranger minor league organizations. I work with the Dallas Stars some. I work with the Allen Americans some. I work with FC Dallas. So I've got the chance to work with a lot of the sports teams in the area. But you don't start there. Obviously, you start with Little League, like I started. You start with, start work with the high schools, maybe colleges, but you build up to that. But there are other elements that kind of merge in with the neurovision, because one of the big conversations now in sports is concussion, right? So there is kind of that commonality in the two organizations. So really, there's a lot of interplay and interdisciplinary between both those types of organizations.
Okay, very neat. No, thanks for sharing all that. That's very cool and very fascinating. So as you are, as you're going along here, the past 20 years after you struck it out on your own and built this comprehensive practice, I mean, what do you suppose, because it all is sounding great and you've got great stories and I appreciate you sharing them. What do you suppose have been some of the bigger challenges outside of, continuing education, but from a business perspective? What have been some of the bigger challenges of growing this type of practice?
Well, the biggest challenge is the same challenge that every practice has, and that's dealing with insurance companies.
Yeah.
So, okay, because we don't take any of the vision plans like VSP or IMED or anything like that. We did at one point, but we stopped as we minimized our primary care practice. But we still have to deal with the medical insurance companies, the workers' comp companies, things of that nature. We deal a lot with attorneys, especially in these brain injury cases. So really, but really these insurance companies and how I think one of the biggest challenges I have is, for instance, when I'm on staff at Baylor Institute for Rehabilitation in Baylor, Dallas, and I go see patients there every Thursday, and I would see all these patients, and we bill insurance there for their visit, and then they come here, and I can bill them for the visit, but then, hey, you need to do more vision rehabilitation, and we can't bill it. And there's that loss of continuity of care because you can't do what you really want to be able to do to help the patient. Say you have a patient with a cranial nerve palsy, and you're really trying to get them back to single vision without any type of prism lenses. Vision rehab becomes a really good thing to do, but you lose that continuity. So if I say there's one thing that's overwhelming and is just having to deal with insurance companies, how to figure out how to navigate that insurance world, or the non-insurance world for that matter, to be able to deliver your services the way you want to deliver them. So I'd say that's the biggest thing. The other thing was just managing growth, because you'd start growing, the practice would start growing, and we'd get more people referring us. So we had people just calling us, hey, and then we went from the 2,500 square foot office to what we're in now is a 6,000 square foot office, and we're almost blowing out of the seams of that now. So it's like, but of course the cost of running everything has changed. Obviously, sure. This inflation, has really, impacted everything. The cost of contact lenses, the cost of supplies, the cost of disposables, they've all gone up now. So dealing with how do you keep it an affordable treatment? How do you keep these treatments affordable when all of our expenses are gone? So I think those are the biggest challenges.
Very good. Look, I know we're coming up close on our scheduled time together, and I want to be respectful of your time. Kind of in wrapping this up, what do you have in terms? I mean, you've dropped a lot of great information throughout the interview, and we're very grateful for that. But in wrapping things up, if you had, just one final thought or major takeaway that's really helped you throughout your practice or throughout your career, what would that be for folks listening?
Well, I think I've said it already, and I think it's love what you do.
Yeah.
If you do your job the right way, the money will follow. I never worry about tracking this, that, or the other. I worry about taking care of people, doing it the right way. And I think the last thing I'll point out here, and I think it's the most important thing. Remember, those eyeballs are connected to a human being. Okay, you have a human in your chair. You got to treat them like a human. You've got to listen to all their cares and all their concerns, and have a conversation with them, and really just get beyond their eyes, and really understand your patient in the chair, and that's going to help you be a better doctor.
Yeah, for sure. Very good. Well, thank you so much, Charles. I appreciate your time and all your experience and knowledge that you shared with us today. Thank you so much, and I hope we get to talk again here sometime.
I'm glad to do it. Thank you.
Right, you bet.